All right, guys, so I've made several cutting board videos now, and I finally feel like now's a good time to give you my 7-step guide to making an edge grain butcher block style cutting board. So to get it right into the 7 steps, the first step is to choose your wood species, find a design, and do some math. So for today, we're going to use walnut and maple, and this is the design we're going to use and the math. So I know that I want my overall length and width of the board to be 18 by 12 inches. I'm going to use 3/4 inch thick strips. So then I just have to divide the total width of the board, 12 inches, by 3/4 inch, which gives me 16 total 3/4 inch thick boards. So for that, I'm going to need 14 walnut strips and then 2 maple strips. I can do math. And then I'm going to add in some thin strips at a 1/4 inch piece of the maple. So the overall board will come out to be 12.5 inches, and I'll shave some off of the walnut. You'll see what I mean. So that's step 1. All right, for step 2, we're going to cut our lumber down to rough dimensional size. So I'm looking to get those 16 total strips, 14 walnut, and 4 maple. I know that that equals 20. Or 18, sorry, but like I said, those 1/4 inch strips, I'll need 2. All right. All right, now that you've got all of your lumber cut to rough dimensional size, right? We've got our 14 pieces of walnut and our 4 pieces of maple. We need to get the lumber to S4S. So we need to surface our lumber. If you pre-bought surface lumber, then you're probably good to go to skip to the next step. So go ahead and fast forward if you need to. However, if you didn't and you, like me, bought rough lumber, rough sawn lumber, then you need to surface it. And so why we're doing that is if I take these 2 pieces that have not been surfaced and I try to put them together, see here, you should be able to see a pretty significant gap in the wood because the 2 faces are not resting against each other well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to surface all of the faces here. The sides, the edges should be good enough for a cutting board. And so let's get to surfacing. Okay, for step 4, once you've got your lumber all S4S and surfaced, we're going to go ahead and start the glue up. Step 4 is the glue up. So I use Titebond III for my edge grain and face grain boards. If you're going to do an in grain board, I totally recommend you do Titebond II just because of the way the glue dries, because it's more flexibility. But this is an edge grain board, so we're going to use Titebond III. Remember, more glue, the better. All right, everybody. After step 4, we're on to step 5. So there are a couple ways to do this, but basically we're going to surface the board. So the first thing we need to do is get all this dried up, gunked off glue off of the board and ensure we have one fairly flat surface. So I do it with a chisel, an old chisel that I have, and I just scrape off all the excess glue. You could, after about 30 minutes of having it in the clamp, when the glue starts to get gummy, you could come with a card scraper and scrape the excess glue off. But I find a chisel works just fine, so let's get at it. All right, so once we've got all of the gunked up glue off, I'm going to find a flat surface. For me, I'm using my table saw top surface. And you just want to, like I said, ensure you have one flat surface. So I'll rock all the corners, make sure it's relatively flat. This board's been sitting for about a week and a half in a cold shop. So there's a little bit of rock, but hardly anything. That's the side that we want to put against the planer sled or planer tables, so that's the side that's being referenced to make a parallel surface. Let's go ahead and run it through the planer and surface it. All right, team, so I'm turning this into a 9-step guide as opposed to 8. So step 6 is going to be cutting your board to final dimensions, right? So if we get my tape measure and we measure up our board, we've got about 12 inches in width, which is what we want. It's really 12 and just over an eighth. So we'll cut it down to 12 exactly. And then we want to get this down to 18. And remember, we left about 19. So we'll take about half an inch off of each side. Or if there are any defects you're not happy with, which there are on mine. So I'm going to cut probably a little bit less off of this side, a little bit more off this side. But let's go ahead and cut this to final dimensions. All right, on to step 7. So we're going to start adding the finishing touches, right? We're getting close to being done with this board. So now that we've got it cut to final dimensions, we're going to add those flourishes that are nice to sell. So we're going to add the roundover on all the edges. We're going to add the handholds, and we're going to do the juice groove. Now, super imperative to this step is you decide which side of the board you want to be the top. So for me, I want this side to be the top, so that lets me reference the router table correctly and then know which side to add my juice groove on. So let's go ahead and cut the handholds. No particular order in which you do this in. I just prefer to do it this way, the handholds first, because that's the bit that I've got in my router table. Let's go. All right, so now we're gonna cut the juice groove into the top of the board. You'll see I'm using my juice groove jig here that I created. There's a video on that I'll link in the description with plans and everything. I just highly recommend making a jig for it. It's adjustable and I can do any size board and it takes me less than 2 minutes to set up. So you just size it to your board, run your trim router with a bullnose bit, and your juice groove is done. Take shallow passes and you'll see me stop every once in a while to vacuum up the shavings and sawdust that come out so that it doesn't get caught in between the jig and the router. Okay, and on to step 8. So for step 8 is not the most exciting, but it is one of the most critical parts of finishing your cutting board. We're going to start sanding. So everybody's got a different technique on sanding, and I'll share mine. I sand with 80 grit, 120, 220, and then I water pop and finish with 400. So I won't show you guys the entire extent of sanding. It'll take a little while, but I use my random Orbit sander. And that's pretty much it. And then a hand sander with a foam pad to get the juice grooves, the handholds corners and things that are hard to reach with the random orbit sander. But I do want to talk about water popping and why it's so important. So to water pop, we're going to take a spray bottle and just lightly coat the entire board, front, back, all the sides, inside the juice groove with water, wipe it off, and then let it dry naturally. And what that's going to do between the grains of, or the grits of 220 and 400 is raise all of that grain that we've knocked down with the previous sanding grits. And once we've raised it up, you'll feel that it gets fuzzy after being smooth from sanding to 220. And then we'll knock it all down and finish it with 400. The reason we do that, if you don't water pop and you just strand straight to 400, you'll get that real nice smooth finish. But then the first time your user goes to wash the board, it'll raise all that grain up from the sanding process and their board will be fuzzy afterwards. So it's a real easy thing to do, an easy thing to forget, but it makes a huge difference and keeps your board nice and smooth for the duration of its life. So let's get sanding. And finally, guys, we are at step 9. My favorite part of the cutting board build process is putting the final seal coat finish onto your board, really bringing it to life and making it a usable, durable product for your customers, your clients, your friends, whoever you're making this for, yourself. So I use a homemade mixture of mineral oil and beeswax. Super simple mixture. One of my other videos talks about it. I'll link it in the description. It's basically a 4-to-1 ratio of mineral oil to beeswax. I make it in a crock pot, and this tub will last me probably years. And you know, it cost me about 30 bucks to make. But there's all kinds out there: walrus oil, board butter, all kinds of things. So you just take a pretty healthy amount. That's a good bit. This will probably cover the whole surface. And then you rub it into the board. That's all you do. You just rub it in there really nice and generously, and we'll let it sit and absorb overnight and then come back and wipe it off. All right, everybody, after 9 easy steps, we have made an edge grain butcher block style cutting board. Follow those steps and you can make it too. Hopefully you learned something during this video and are able and feel confident to go and make your own. If there's anything that I didn't cover enough or you have more questions on, feel free to ask about them in the comments. I reply to all the comments, happy to help you guys get started on your own projects and create beautiful pieces like this one here. So I'll link all of the products that I used, all the tools to make this cutting board in the description. They're Amazon affiliate links. Feel free to use them or just find whatever you need at your local big box store. Pretty much everything is there. But again, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll make sure to link the video to the cutting board oil mixture that I made myself in the description, as well as the video on how to make the juice groove jig that I think is just super helpful to have in the shop. So thanks for watching. This has been 5 o'clock Woodshop. If you're new here, like, subscribe, and just become a part of our awesome community. We're really growing strong. We're doing some great things, learning a lot together, and hopefully I gave you a little something to take away here today. Thanks, everybody. It's been 5 o'clock Woodshop.